Holbrook Travel is pleased to bring you this webinar today, Belize Birding and More, an expert panel discussion on natural wonders, birding, and Belize's conservation story. Located at the base of the Yucatan Peninsula, Belize is smaller than the state of New Hampshire, but packed into that small country, visitors will find a diversity of ecosystems and beautiful natural landscapes that provide habitat for a variety of neotropical flora and fauna, and which make Belize a prime birding destination with more than 500 recorded species. During our presentation today, our experts will share the story of Belize and how this small country serves as a model for successful conservation initiatives. We'll hear a little bit of a general overview on the geography and natural history of Belize before diving into the country's bird diversity. We'll also hear about the work of the Belize Audubon Society, which is the foremost environmental organization protecting the country's natural resources and educating the public about their value and sustainable use. We'll learn about 3 protected areas in particular: Coxcomb Basin Wildlife Sanctuary, Crooked Tree Wildlife Sanctuary, and St. Hermans Blue Hole National Park. Lastly, we'll have Belize as a destination with something for everyone, with experiences and activities suitable for all kinds of travelers with different interests. And then we'll have time for questions with our panelists at the end. Our first presenter today is Ronnie Martinez. Ronnie is a certified tour guide who specializes in neotropical birds and the plants of Belize, in addition to leading expeditions for hardcore birders, wildlife photographers, and families. Ronnie also provides basic and advanced training for other birding guides. He has a deep passion for conservation issues, especially those involving the endangered species of his country. Over the years, he has volunteered with research and conservation projects involving rare species, such as orange-breasted falcons with the Peregrine Fund, scarlet macaws with the Belize Bird Conservancy, and solitary eagles and Stygian owls with the Belize Raptor Research Institute. Next, we're joined by Doris Chook. Doris is the Environmental Education and Communications Director for the Belize Audubon Society, the oldest and largest conservation NGO in the country. The Belize Audubon Society supports conservation through environmental education, community development, and biodiversity research. We're also joined by Debbie Jordan. Debbie has been part of the Holbrook team for over 25 years, or 27 years actually, and in her roles as Holbrook's ambassador and specialty travel consultant, Debbie has planned and developed hundreds of group birding and natural history programs over the years. Debbie's passion for travel, nature, and boating have led her to visit all 50 US states and more than 35 countries around the world, including multiple trips to Belize. She's passionate about conservation and spends her free time volunteering in the Lower Sewanee National Wildlife Refuge near her home in Florida. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Ronnie Martinez. Ronnie, welcome and thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Lindsay. So I also want to thank everyone for joining us, and let's start this journey through Belize. I'll just share my screen right here. There we go. So I'll go through some of the most emblematic birds you will be seeing here in Belize, but I'll also be talking a bit about the different regions here in Belize that you can visit and some of the key habitats and some of the birds that you can find in there. So that's what I will be sharing this afternoon. But if you have been to Belize, you will see many points that you are familiar with. But if not, this is Belize in a nutshell. We are the newest country in Central America. We just got our independence in 1981. We have a small population compared to our neighbors. We have just around 400,000 people living here in Belize. And we have Mexico to the north, and Guatemala is our other neighbor to the west and to the south. So size-wise, you can think of maybe the size of Massachusetts. That's an approximate size to our country. And we speak many languages, but perhaps the 3 most common ones are Creole, which is spoken by everyone who was born here in Belize. We also speak Spanish, English, and 3 different dialects of Maya. There are many different ethnic groups living here in Belize, including among the 11, we have including Garifuna, Maya, and Mestizo. So it's a real mix that we have here in Belize. And many people ask us, in a nutshell, what is Belize like? Well, We're part of Central America. We have strong Caribbean roots and a British past. So we're quite the mix. Some people call us the melting pot of races, and we really are. I mean, it's hard to say who is Belizean just by looking at that person. We have been mixing with all our neighbors so that it's hard to pinpoint who really is Belizean. So the faces are so diverse, as you can imagine. I mean, we have here some typical faces that you'll find around Belize. We have the Creole, we have the Mestizo, we have the Garifuna right in the middle. In top center, we have what is typically a Maya family during a gathering. So it's so diverse. The cultures is, you know, it's vibrant. And it's really interesting that you go from one village to another village or from one town to another, and the culture just changes dramatically from one place to another. Likewise, our food, it's a mixture. I mean, we have some strong influence from Central America, but our roots still have a lot of the Maya cuisine, but we also have a strong influence from the Caribbean and a little bit that is left from, you know, our British past. So when you come to Belize, there's always a mix of flavors, and you're always wanting to try, you know, what's going to be for dinner, what's going to be for lunch, because there's always a mix of interesting food around the corner. On this slide, you can see one of our national plates on the top left. This is the rice and beans with stewed chicken, fried plantains, and a potato salad. That's a whole mix. Everywhere in Belize, you can find that. The Mexican influence that we have on the lower left, we have tacos, meat patties on the top right, which are, you know, some of the very popular snacks to be found around Belize. So as you can see, there's a whole mixed influence from all over the place. So let me start talking a little bit about the country itself. Physically, we're not a country that is very hilly, very mountainous. I mean, except for the Maya Mountains, pretty much the entire country is very flat, especially the coastal area. But in the central part, as you can see, some of the higher points go up to about 1,000 meters or a bit over 3,000 feet. That's at our highest points. But it's a good area for some of the highland species, some hummingbirds, some tanagers that really like the highlands. That's the area where we would go. And it's mostly within the Cayo district, a little bit of the Stan Creek, like the western part of Coxcomb Basin, and the northern part of the Toledo district, the southernmost district that share those highlands. Ecosystems, it's hard to put them into one map because we have so many. But just to give you an idea, for example, you can wake up in the Mountain Pine Ridge, which is part of the highlands here in Belize, looking at the sunrise, drinking your coffee, and at the end of the day, you can be on the beach on one of the islands watching the sunset. It's all within reach within a day. It's and you go through so many different habitats around the country. But this is just to give you an idea, and I'll break it down a little bit when we go by the different regions, like the north, the central, and the southern part of Belize, so that you get a better idea of what the main habitats around those areas are. We have 6 main important bird and biodiversity areas here in Belize. First, we have like the northeastern part of Belize, which contains the northern coastal plains. That area also encompasses some of the lowland, the dry Yucatan forest, which holds several endemic species that you can find. Another very important one is number 3, which is Crooked Tree and the associated wetlands. It's a huge Ramsar site, and you know, thousands and thousands of waders and herons and egrets congregate there during migration, but also during our dry season, because it's an important feeding area. But it also serves as a flood control for the lowlands. So several very important areas. And number 6, which is the Maya Mountains and all those southern reserves, that's where most of our forests, our mature forests are. So it's really to give you an idea of where our important bird and biodiversity areas lie here in Belize. So we have more than 100 protected areas. This means that pretty much anywhere you travel in the country, you're always within reach of a national park, a forest reserve, a wildlife sanctuary, a marine reserve, or another protected area. So about 40% of the country is under some form of protection. And it's really nice because that means that there's a lot of jungle still around. There's still a lot of wildlife pretty much in any area that you go of this beautiful country. So of those over 100 reserves, I'll just break it down. Generally, we have 67 terrestrial reserves. All these forest reserves, the wildlife sanctuaries on the mainland. We have 67 of those. This one that you see here in this image is actually part of the Mountain Pine Ridge Forest Reserve, part of the Coxcomb Basin Wildlife Sanctuary, and part of the Siboon Forest Reserve. This is kind of the area where all three protected areas kind of join, but it gives you a good idea of how vast the area of protection is. Apart from these terrestrial reserves, we have 21 marine protected areas. Some of these include areas where we find spawning aggregations for snapper and other important commercial fish, but also some of the only areas where some of the seabirds will be nesting. A good example of that is the area at Half Moon Key, which is the only nesting ground for the red-footed booby that we have in this, pretty much in this entire region. But for snorkeling, for diving, this is why Belize is such a haven, because it's easy. I mean, there's a lot of wildlife that you can observe underwater, and I think Debbie will talk a little bit more about these as well. This is a photograph of Half Moon Key, the last little island that we have at the edge of the Barrier Reef before the open blue. And this is the nesting colony that I was talking about. The red-footed boobies are nesting on this island. But I mean, this is like the typical postcard image that you would get. We also have 15 different archaeological reserves in Belize. In the photograph, that big temple that you see there is Caracol, and the inset on the top right is Lamanai, two of the very popular archaeological reserves. But pretty much any district that you go, you will find an archaeological reserve around the area. Apart from the archaeological reserves above ground, we also have archaeological reserves underground, like this one. This is the ATM Cave, a world famous cave that you actually have to swim into to get to the inside of the cave. And actually a river flows through the cave. For those seeking adventure, this is one of the highlights when you visit Belize. So let's talk about the birds and the habitats now. So I'll divide the country into three different areas. This first area, we'll call it the northern part of Belize. This is the Corozal district and the Orange Walk district. The two northernmost districts, and both of them have or share some border with Mexico, and Orange Walk also shares a little bit of border with Guatemala. So these are the two northernmost districts. And typically the habitats around here, it's very flat. We have the Yucatan dry forest. So for most of the year, it's a very dry area. But this is a very interesting habitat because it's very low. The canopy is very low, and the rainfall is also very little. We get about 60 inches of rain normally a year, which is dry for our standards in a subtropical country like Belize. But it gives way to some interesting birds. This is a shot of the Lamanai Archaeological Reserve. Again, some of the Yucatan dry forest, but since it's all lowland, we also get some big lagoons, marshes, and other wetlands, which are very, very important for bird life, just to give you an idea of what the habitats look like. Some of the birds that we find, we have, for example, the buff-bellied hummingbird. And this little hummingbird is interesting. This, in due time, it might actually be separated and become its own species. It's quite different from the ones that you have in the southern part of the US, where the range also extends. In the middle, you have the black-colored hawk. This is our version of the bald eagle. This is one of those eagles that you will find around wetlands, some coastal areas as well, but it looks for fish. And then on the right, we have the beautiful gray-throated chat, which is a small warbler-like bird that is found mostly in very dry habitat and predominantly in the northern part of Belize. And this is one of the Yucatan endemics. So you have to come to this area in order to observe this bird. Because we have so many marshes and swamps in the area as well, this is where we can get the majestic Jabiru stork. This one is actually taking a freshwater eel for breakfast. And another one that we can find in those areas is the pinnated bittern, which is very, very difficult to see. But we have explored the area long enough that we kind of know the hiding spot. So when you come to Belize, when you visit Belize, we take you straight to the areas where you can find this pinnated bittern. A couple of the other Yucatan endemics, we have the Yucatan curwil on the left, which is, it's hard to see this one, but on night drives or night walks, we sometimes come across them. In the middle, we have the Utpan J. It's noisy, but it's a beautiful bird. I mean, jet black with that turquoise blue. It's a beautiful bird, and it's usually found in the drier savannas. And on the right, we have the rose-throated tanager. This is one of those that you'll find in the Yucatan dry forest. In the northern part of Belize, it's quite common. You can find several individuals on a walk or on a drive in the forest. Some other colorful ones, we have the ocellated turkey. And it's a close relative to the ones you have in North America, but this one's a bit more colorful. So when we go to areas like La Milpa or the northwestern part of Belize, they can actually be common. Sometimes you're walking around the archaeological sites and they're walking right behind you. Then we have the green honeycreeper. This one comes into feeders. So sometimes you're having your coffee early morning and you'll see 2 or 3 of these coming into a feeder. And then on the lower right, we have the gray-headed tanager. This is one of the species that will follow ant swarms when you're walking along a forest trail. Moving now into the central area now, and if you notice on this map, the Philip Goldson International Airport is close to Belize City. So this is actually where you arrive. When you get to Belize, this is where you will land, and then we can take you around to just about any point in Belize. But the central part is composed of the Belize district and the Cayo district. And many of you have perhaps heard about the Cayo district because of the number of archaeological sites or the caves or the birding or so much more. So this is kind of the general area where it is. And we have a lot of forest still in this area. And this is where the Maya Mountains also start, the foothills of the Maya Mountains start. But to give you an idea of what the habitat looks like, yes, we have some flat areas, but as you go deeper into the districts, you start getting some elevation. This is an area around 1,000-foot falls, and this goes between an elevation of 2,800 feet, and you can go up to beyond 3,000 feet at Baldebitan in the mountain pine ridge. And some areas are broadly forest, but this area in particular where you're seeing the hills over here are pines, and this is because there's granite in this area. Deeper into the Chickpea Bowl, we also have the Limestone Hills, and as some of you might know, the limestone it's like Swiss cheese. It's got cavities, it's got holes and crevices all in between, and broadleaf forest grows on top of it. This is a shot of the Chickpea Bowl area. This is an area called the Natural Arch, because or Natural Bridge, some people call it, because water has actually carved a bridge right through the limestone. So there's land over the water, as you can see in this image, but it gives you a good idea of the habitat that you can find in this area. Some of the species that you can find, orange-breasted falcon on the left, this is one of those high target species. Many people who come to Belize are looking for this bird because it's one of the rarest neotropical birds. It's not common anywhere. As you go higher up the hills, this bird on the top right is the shining honeycreeper. If you go to Coxcomb, if you go to Bokawina, these are some areas where you can find it. And then you have the agami heron, which is perhaps the most beautiful heron. It's so bright, has so many different colors. And this is one that you will find along slow-moving creeks and streams. Sometimes you're paddling down a creek and you encounter one of these individuals. They really like the slow-moving waters. Higher up, we also have the scarlet macaws in the Chickpea Bowl. Like if you visit Caracol or this area in the Cayo district, you can get them. On the top right, you have the northern emerald toucanets. This is a pair that was nesting at Black Rock Lodge, one of the lodges that we visit during our birding trips, and also the brightly colored elegant Euphonia on the lower right as well. All brightly colored birds that you can find in the jungle. When you are in the mountain pine ridge, that's a raptor hotspot. So you will find some incredible species like this black and white hawk eagle on the left and the ultra rare solitary eagle on the right. These are species that are hard to find outside of that area. They really like the higher elevations and the contours in the hills around the area. So two species that you might find when you're visiting the mountain pine ridge. But also you can find in just around the gardens at the different lodges, the one on the top left is the yellow-winged tanager, just below it. Another species that you can find in the mountain pine ridge is Mucus warbler. And then another species that's high on target list is the Stygian owl on the right. It's a beautiful owl that seems to prefer the mountain pine ridge or pine savannas for roosting. And then we move to the southern part of Belize. It's composed of the Stan Creek district and the Toledo district. And both of these districts actually have part of the Maya Mountains. They also have some nice coastal savannas, some nice wetlands, and a lot of mangrove along the edges as they meet the sea. So they have some beautiful beaches around there as well, but some nice patches of mangrove around there. And this is also where we will take a boat to several different protected, marine protected areas like Silk Keys or Glover's Reef, or even Sapodilla Keys. So just to give you an idea of which areas we use as a shipping point to go out to explore the barrier reef for snorkeling or diving. And as I mentioned, closer to the coast, you have some mangroves and then you have a lot of wetlands as well. But as you go further inland, as you can see in the background, you start getting some of the hills. And if you go further in, then you end up at the Maya Mountains. But it's a good cross section of different habitats that you can visit from the beach all the way up to the Maya Mountains. This is a photograph of the area around the Bladen Nature Reserve. And this is as you leave the coastal marshes, then you start getting the broadleaf forest, and in the back, you have the Maya Mountains. So some of the species that you find in the forests around here, red-legged honeycreeper that you see on the left. Around the mangroves and the coastal savannas, you will sometimes find the mangrove cuckoo that you see on the top right. And another common one around several of the trails around is the white-colored mannequin. Beautiful small bird. When they're lekking during the breeding season, you can actually find them by the sound that they make, that cracking sound or ripping sound that they make with their wings. A couple other species that you can find around here. Very, very difficult to get, but if you decide to spend enough time in Bladen or maybe even in Coxcomb, you have the majestic harpy eagle, the largest raptor that we have here in Belize. And then on the right, we have a pair of spot-breasted orioles. These are recent arrivals. They actually came in after a storm, probably brought in from Honduras or Guatemala. So these are recent visitors to Belize who decided to stay because, I don't know, maybe they like the weather or the habitat around Punta Gorda and the southern districts. Also around the coastal areas in mangroves, you get the clapper rail. This is a species that is usually very difficult to see, but we find that even closer to Belize City, because the mangroves are abundant and there are some open areas in between, you get good looks at clapper rail. We have white-necked Jacobin, a beautiful hummingbird that will usually come to feeders. If you're walking along trails in the forest, you can get, this is one of the southern specialties. You have to go into Toledo district, the southernmost district, to get this one on the top right, which is a black-crowned antripe. And then just below it, the brightly colored crimson colored tanager. Crimson colored tanager you can get sometimes while you're driving, like into Coxcomb Basin or into Bukawina or other protected areas, and they're very common. They'll even come into feeders, or sometimes you're just boarding the tour bus and you get them flying around in the garden. So a common and quite a beautiful one that you can find around. And if you start exploring some of the islands as well, if you're interested in diving or snorkeling, but also want to do a little bit of birding, that's why Belize is so special, because you can dive or snorkel all day, and then in the afternoon, if you want to do a little bit of birding, you can still find some interesting species around. We have on some of the islands and pretty much the whole coastal area where we have mangroves, you can find this one on the top left, which is a mangrove warbler. And just below it, we have roseate terns that nest in some of the islands like silk peas. And then the rufous-necked wood rail, which is one of those species that you will find feeding amongst the mangroves on the right. So those are some of the species that you can find when you're out there at some of the islands and sometimes even the coastal areas. So I hope you enjoyed a small sample of our birds. I mean, this is as much as I could fit into 20, 30 minutes, but there's so much more that you can get when you come to explore Belize. So with that, I would like to thank you for exploring Belize with me. And now I would like to invite Darice to tell us a little bit about the conservation story that Belize has to offer.
Thank you, Ronnie, for that beautiful virtual tour of Belize. So good afternoon. Following on the heels of what Ronnie just shared with you, I want to spend a few minutes just talking to you about Belize Audubon Society and some of the conservation work that we do here. Oh, there we go. So how we got started, Belize Audubon Society was established in 1969, and our story is quite interesting. We were once a chapter of the Florida Audubon Society. One of our founding members came from Florida with this idea, along with other local Belizeans, to create an organization that would advocate for the protection of Belize's flora and fauna. Being a chapter of the Florida Audubon Society didn't last for a long time. 3 years is what our history tells us. But however, the name stayed with us. It was a great cause and initiative. And so the first 10 years of Belize Audubon Society, we spent a lot of time advocating and creating awareness about our beautiful flora and fauna, and the need for protecting wildlife and natural areas in Belize. As a result of all that work of advocating and working with the government, 2 important pieces of legislations were created. That's our National Park System Act and our Wildlife Protection Act in 1981. And immediately after the passing of our National Park System Act in 1981, the very first protected area was declared in Belize. That's the beautiful Half Moon Cay Natural Monument. And I think Ronnie shared a really nice aerial shot of Half Moon Cay. And so from then on, in 1982, into the early 1990s, the work of Belize Audubon Society evolved from a solely bird conservation organization to one that had structured programs that would support not only bird conservation, but the whole gamut. So habitats and all wildlife and natural resources in our country. So I just wanted to share that beautiful, another view of Half Moon Cay there. This is the eastern end of the island that has the coconut plantation. The view that you saw earlier from Ronnie is the western end of the island that has the nesting colony of red-footed booby birds. So Half Moon Cay is kind of our signature protected area where we all started with that work on the ground. For Belize Audubon Society, conservation for birds and their habitat is something that we continue to do through our work. 3 programs in particular: our protected area program that ensures the on-site, on the ground management of the protected area to ensure that the forests are maintained and all the ecosystems are maintained, and that there are no degradation from other outside influences. Our conservation program is important, and it has grown over the years, looking at validating the science of what we do and validating the importance of these protected areas. The work from our conservation program also feeds directly into our environmental education program so that we can prepare targeted messages for the communities that live adjacent to the protected areas and for the entire country in general when we have campaigns that we wish to put out to the public. We also have our community program, our community outreach program that looks at those communities that lie directly within the buffer zone of our protected areas. The goal of working with them is very important because we want to promote economic alternatives for income diversification for these communities. They live very close to these biodiversity rich areas. And so if people can see the value of the protected areas, then they in turn will help to protect the natural resources, and it's a win-win situation. I want to take you a little bit closer to protected areas in Belize. I know Ronnie touched some of it, but birding protected areas is an important part of what we promote at Belize Audubon Society. Just for clarity, Belize Audubon Society co-manages, it's a special agreement with the government of Belize for the on-site management of protected areas, 7 protected areas in Belize. And I will go into 3 in particular. The first one, starting from the north of our country, is the Crooked Tree Wildlife Sanctuary. And then we'll move on to St. Hermans, Blue Hole National Park, and the Coxcomb Basin Wildlife Sanctuary. So Crooked Tree Wildlife Sanctuary is a waterbird heaven. And as Ronnie said, it covers, it protects wetland ecosystems, over 16,000 acres of wetlands. It's a stronghold for the Jabiru Stork. Everybody loves this beautiful bird. And especially in the dry season, there's large congregations of waterbirds in the lagoon at Crooked Tree. So between November and June is a good time to spot the Jabirus. Crooked Tree records about 260 bird species. But in addition to the wetland birds, Crooked Tree also offers great opportunity to spot Yucatan endemics right there in that northern area of Belize, such as the black-throated bobwhite, the Yucatan woodpecker, the Utpan J, and of course the yellow-headed parrot in the pine forest adjacent to the wetland there. Crooked Tree is rich with culture and history. There's a community that's literally in the center of the wetland, Crooked Tree Village, dating back to over 300 years. And so definitely on your visit to Belize, Crooked Tree would be one of those destinations that can provide the birding for you, the cultural experience, all in one visit. We're moving on now to St. Hermans Blue Hole National Park. This small protected area is right, we like to describe it in the foothills of the Maya Mountains here in Belize. So right at the beginning of where our higher elevations begin. It's a 575 acre protected area. It protects broadleaf forests and is an important representation of karstic limestone features. And that's what gives the parks its popularity. There's a blue hole there, a turquoise blue karstic sinkhole, and two cave systems, the St. Hermans Cave and the Mountain Cow Cave. There are many nature trails that rank from easy to moderate, which offers great opportunity for bird watching. And at this very small protected area, it has an impressive 300 species of birds on record. And on my slide, as you can see, those are some of the common birds spotted at St. Hermans. In any day tour, you're guaranteed to see the rufous-tailed jacamar, the barred antshrike, and of course the emerald toucanet. So those are three of my favorites, and whenever I visit the park, it's more than likely that I will see one of those birds. Coxcomb Basin Wildlife Sanctuary became world renowned because of its jaguar reserve status, the first jaguar reserve in the world. So that makes it very exciting. Just gambling with fate that you might see a jaguar is something that excites people. But because we're protecting the jaguar, it's such a large expanse of forests and mixed forest ecosystems there. So we have broadleaf forests, pine forests, some swamp forest in there as well. It's a large area, over 128,000 acres. It has well-maintained nature trails that offers great opportunity again for bird watching and just enjoying being out in nature, waterfalls, beautiful views, vistas of the Maya Mountain Range when you're hiking in Coxcomb, again, because it's within that higher elevation of the country. There's accommodations at Coxcomb, so camping, their cabins and their rooms, and 350 species of birds at Coxcomb. So again, it's a stronghold for birding, definitely for birding in Belize, and Ronnie can attest to that. Okay, so that was the last protected area there that I wanted to speak a little bit about. So why bird protected areas? Well, it's obvious, right? They're rich in biodiversity. So we saw the numbers: Coxcomb, 350 birds, Crooked Tree, the large congregation of water birds. But for us at Belize Audubon Society, it's important that when you understand that when you visit a protected area, we're increasing the number of persons that benefit from bird-based tourism. This includes local guides, other community businesses that are, many of them are right on the boundary or the entrance to these protected areas, all these craft shops, other artisans, food vendors. All these people and communities benefit from your visit to a protected area. With increased number of visitors to a protected area, there's more revenue to support site infrastructure, staff, conservation programs that we run, and communities in general. Belize Audubon Society is a not-for-profit organization, non-governmental, and so I would say about 60% of our revenue comes from entrance fees that you pay when you visit a protected area. So that's very important for us. So how can you help? You can hire a local guide. And I know that through partnerships with groups like Holbrook, the National Audubon Society, we have been working for the past 5 years to do exactly that, to work with local guides when they bring tours to Belize. And so that's something we continue to encourage and share your experience. There's nothing like going back home and sharing your wonderful experience of visiting Belize and one of these protected areas, and just all the spin-off effect of you visiting a protected area. Again, some investments to support the bird tourism market has been done, and something that we continue to keep up with in order for us to have a good product. So over the years, under a project and a partnership we had with the National Audubon Society through their International Alliances program, we were able to train local guides, 65 guides trained in both basic and advanced bird guiding. Capacity building for several local businesses so that they can promote bird tourism, and just so that they can have that structure to better serve their clients, their birding clients. An important study was conducted, a bird tourism market statistics study for Belize. And this is very important because we were better able to understand the true contribution and value of bird-based tourism to the economy. So it showed that 10% of overnight visitors engaged in some birding activity. Marketing and promoting of bird tourism in Belize again continues by Belize Audubon Society, by our local guides like Ronnie Martinez, the National Audubon Society through their International Alliances program, through tour and travel companies like Holbrook and others that we continue to engage with. So just wanted to share that with you, some of the investments that has helped to improve the bird tourism market here in Belize. I have a quick little...
Visit Belize, a small English-speaking country with big birding. Here, big thrills come in a small package. And bird watching is more than simply watching birds. It's protecting them. Because when you hire a locally trained guide, your birding experience supports a system where people and birds thrive together. And livelihoods are tied to nature. Visit Belize and go big with your birding.
All right, so that's kind of our tagline, right? It's big birding, small country. So just to recap, and I know Ronnie covered a lot of this, but no harm in sharing it again, right? Belize is blessed to have 590 species of birds. We have the largest barrier reef, so you can do birding and some snorkeling, as Ronnie said. It's a cultural melting pot. We're English speaking, we're small in size, often compared to the size of Massachusetts. But we have rich Mayan archaeology that pairs well with bird watching. We are geographically well placed, safe with good infrastructure. I know that's important for everyone. And birding can be done all year round. And so with that, I just want to say that the team at Belize Audubon Society invites you to join us in exploring Belize, our birding nation, and go big with your birding. Thank you.
Thank you, Doris. At this point, we'd like to welcome Debbie. Debbie, are you with us? Debbie, I'm not hearing your audio.
Hello, can you hear me now?
There we go. I can hear you now.
Hi, everybody. Now, why can't I seem to, there we go. Okay, well, welcome. Well, that was just really great. I'm glad to be here today. You guys are a really tough act to follow. I can't even believe all of the information you've provided here. And so I'm going to go pretty quickly so we have a chance. We've had quite a few questions coming through. And I really want to see that bird that you have on there, that royal flycatcher with the top not extended. That crest is amazing. I know that's a rare thing to see, but I really, really want to see it. So I'm going to have to come back. I am just going to say a little bit about myself, and I have been with Holbrook now for 27 years and had the wonderful privilege to go lots of places for work, and I've organized tons of groups, lots and lots of groups like Lindsay mentioned earlier, primarily birding, nature, and photography groups because, you know, I very much enjoy that type of activity, and so it just makes it easy, I mean, and fun. I'm so lucky to do something I love to do, and I get to meet amazing people. Our leaders are all so awesome. So I have been 3 times to Belize. The first time I was down there with a very diverse group of teachers. We had private schools and public schools. We had 3 ladies from Detroit who had they've never even swam before, much less snorkeling. So imagine how blown away they were by the barrier reef. And so we had a really experiential trip. That was a lot of fun. And then I had a chance to come back in 2014 on another trip with some professors from Framingham State University that were going basically on a scouting trip to bring students down. And then in 2017, I came down again with the International Alliances Program. National Audubon hosted a group of folks coming to just get familiar with the country. That's where I got to travel with Doris, and we had such fun, great experiences, and just a really fun group of people. We learned a lot about a lot of the protected areas she was just talking about. So, and plus we got to meet a lot of the local guides who have been trained under the International Alliances program that she was talking about, the guide training. So, you know, just to kind of wrap it all up, Belize is definitely super diverse, as you've seen. The different kinds of travelers that go there too, I think because it's very close, that's one good thing. It really is suitable for pretty much anybody. You know, whether you're into nature, obviously it's a very natural destination, but it's also a very touristic destination for adventure seekers. You know, you can go out to Ambergris Key, for example, and do crazy stuff like parasailing and snuba and, of course, diving and just all kinds of water activities. But, you know, that's not my cup of tea to get around a bunch of tourists like that. But, you know, there are people out there that really enjoy that, especially with families, and they're wanting to, you know, to take their teenagers and have a good time. But educationally speaking, it's really good for students as well, and one of those kind of destinations that people, you know, it's just, there's so much to learn about the marine and the terrestrial habitats there. So, oops, sorry about that. So here I just listed a few of the adventure activities, and one of my favorite experiences of Belize was I did get to go to the Atm Cave, and that was just crazy amazing. You know, there were skulls on the floor, and we climbed up to where the Crystal Maiden, I mean, we went in a room that was just like totally filled, it was sparkling with crystals all over the walls. It was just an experience I will never forget, and had a chance to go with an archaeologist in there, so that was really neat. So adventure activities, it's really, really, cave tubing is another real popular one. And then, of course, there is a lot of archaeology and culture and gastronomy and the history of Belize that both of you guys have already given a lot of information about, so I'm not going to repeat that, but the food is awesome, and expect to have a lot of diversity. And if you're a person into hot sauce, the Marie Sharp hot sauce, I guess, is pretty famous, and not me, but I know people that really enjoy that. So, yes, and on the Barrier Reef, once again, you do have lots of different wildlife, including manatees that are out, you know, near the in the protected area of the lagoons as you're at the ocean or at the Caribbean. Also, there's whale sharks that come to feed and spawn at certain times of the year, and the upside down jellyfish by the mangroves. That was something really unique that I enjoyed on my trip with the professors that time. So I have just wonderful things to say about the place. So I would love to talk with you guys too in the audience about it if you're interested in going. One of the places we went in my trip with the professors was to Tobacco Key Marine Station, which is pretty rustic there. No air conditioning, but they did have fans. And we also visited the Tropical Education Center, where I stayed in this little cabin, which was a lot of fun. Beautiful views. It's a small island, but you know, just to have the water right there outside your cabin. But then you can stay in some pretty cool places too that are very fancy, like the Sleeping Giant Lodge here. This place was amazing. Outside showers and baths, and you know, so you can go from the super rustic. You can stay at Coxcomb and be, you know, in a cabin that, well, it's very rustic. They have dorms and, you know, outside bathrooms sort of things, and it was definitely, you can be very rustic or get really, really fancy in Belize. And so, like I said, there's something for everyone. Here's some of the programs that we have that you can see on our website at holbrooktravel.com, and You know, these are some of our tried and true programs, the one on the left being the one we developed with the International Alliances Program. And the others, we also do, besides groups, we organize individual travels as well. So, you know, couples or small family groups, we can assist with the arrangements there in Belize as well. So there's some options on our website to check out. Other than that, I think I'm going to go ahead and wrap up because I want to have time for questions, and it looks like it's already running out of time. So let me stop sharing and turn it back over to Lindsay. Looks like we have a lot of questions there.
We do, yeah. We already have some great questions coming in. Again, if you would like to submit a question, you can do that through your control panel. You'll click Q&A and you can type your question in there to share it with our panelists. So I will start with a question about birding field guides. Ronnie, do you have a particular field guide that you recommend for people who are coming to Belize and want to get familiar with the birds ahead of time? Hey, Ronnie, I think you're muted. Let's see if we can unmute you there.
Sorry, yes, I was.
Sure.
So this is perhaps the most recent one. It's the Peterson's Field Guide to the Birds of Northern Central America. So it includes the birds of Belize, Guatemala, El Salvador, and Honduras. And this is an actual field guide. It's compact enough. It has range maps and even some of the most updated taxonomic changes for the names and the birds. So this is perhaps the most appropriate one. There is also a Birds of Belize, which is this one, which was published back in 2003, I believe. It's a little bit out of date, but still the information on habitat and everything is still relevant. So any of these two should help you to come up with the perfect trip for you.
Great, thank you. We have another question that I believe was answered in the Q&A, but I think it's worth bringing up again, which is a question about when is the best time to visit for birding? I'll put that to you as well, Ronnie.
It's kind of a tough question, but if you come anytime between November and April, you get a good mix of the resident species and the migratory species. Outside of that time, you'll get mostly the resident species. So it really depends on what time you want to come. Having in mind also that usually February to May is the dry season. And then anytime outside of that, you might have some rain in between.
Great, thank you. Debbie, this is a question that I'll put to you. Are there trips that Holbrook offers that include birding, snorkeling, and archaeology?
Yes, we can organize anything for you. We do custom trips. What you see on our website are just sort of samples, but we can combine any of those interests. Yes, absolutely.
Okay, great, thank you. I'll open this up, I guess, to anyone who feels comfortable answering. We have someone who's questioning about, let's see, sorry, where did that go? We had someone who had a question about the mountains in Belize and whether there are windy mountain roads with steep drop-offs. If someone has an issue with heights or is maybe a little not comfortable with heights, is that something that they should be concerned about in the mountain regions?
Let me answer that. I think maybe this person has traveled to other countries in Central America where some of the roads might look a little bit sketchy because of the elevation. The highest points that you can reach by road here in Belize barely go to about 3,000 feet. Usually the roads are quite wide in these areas, particularly in the mountain pine ridge. So it's not like in some Central American countries where some roads are narrow and there's like a steep drop on the side. We don't have those roads. And right now, a lot of the roads going like to protected areas or some of the archaeological reserves are actually being improved. They're being widened. So that shouldn't be an issue.
Great, thank you. Real quick, Ronnie, I think earlier when you were showing the field guide, not everyone was seeing your screen. Can you just hold that up again real quick so people can see what the cover of that looks like?
Sure. So it's
Great,
these
thank
two.
you so much. Great, thank you. Not sure if anyone knows the answer to this, but someone would like to know how many frog species there are in Belize.
That is a good question. I'd have to check. We've been getting recent records from some areas. I want to give an appropriate answer, so let me check first and then get back to them. I can always send in the right answer.
Okay, we can do that. Thank you. Let's see, we have another question. Is sea level rise impacting Belize, and what mitigation is planned?
Hi, so can I try that one? Yes.
Please do.
There are some coastal communities that are already experiencing loss of some land because of sea level rise. And I can think of one in particular in the south, called Honeycreeper in Belize. I know that our National Climate Change Office is working with those communities to look at, to actually measure the impact and to look at adaptation for relocating people living in those coastal areas that are being impacted by the loss of the erosion, the loss of land due to sea level rise. I also know that projections do show that over the next 20 to 50 years, we will lose some of our coastal areas to sea level rise, to inundation. And so, as I said, there's a National Climate Change Office and there are plans. I don't know the details of those plans, but there are plans looking at adaptation. And of course, just strategically not putting any critical infrastructure in those areas where we predict we will lose land.
Great, thank you. I do want to be respectful of time. We're getting close to the hour here, so I will try to wrap up in just a few minutes, but we do have a couple questions about plans for reopening. One person would like to know if the airport is still on schedule to open on August 15th. We have another person who would like to know if American citizens are permitted to visit under the COVID restrictions, and do they have to self-quarantine before entering? Don't know if either of you are able to answer that.
I know that today at 3 p.m. our time, the government or Prime Minister is having a press conference to give us an update. So I have no idea. So up to now, we do know that August 15th is the date set for reopening of the airport or international airport. But as I said, there's an important press conference at 3 p.m. So I would have to listen and see if there's any changes.
Sure, it's a constantly evolving situation, obviously. Thank you very much. Okay, well, unfortunately, we weren't able to get to all of the questions today, but we will try to see if there are any that we weren't able to get to, and we'll do our best to answer those individually. So I do want to say thank you again to everyone who joined us for the presentation today, and thank you especially to Ronnie and Doris and Debbie for sharing their expertise about Belize. Beautiful photos and some very exciting things. So we do have one more webinar scheduled for 2 weeks from today. We'll be skipping next week, but Wednesday the 19th, we have a webinar scheduled, experiential travel and investigating student preconceptions with Paige Keeley. And so that'll be geared towards education and students. And so we'll be sending out more information about that and hope that you can join us. So with that, we'll go ahead and conclude our presentation today. Thank you again to everyone who joined us. The presentation has been recorded and we'll be sending out a link. It will also be available on our YouTube channel, as are all our past webinars. So we hope that you enjoyed it, and have a wonderful rest of your afternoon. Thank you again.
Thank you. Bye, everybody. Bye. Bye, guys.